Rob from Alumni Direct, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you having me.
It's been a while. You run an awesome podcast and a cool company for our listeners. What does Alumni Direct do?
Basically, we've created a centralized platform where athletes and other alumni can network and connect with each other and then tap into various resources, financial resources, health resources, career resources.
Your podcast is really cool, and it's of interest to me, and I think our audience in that it is that, when you're an athlete and the playing days are over and then you go into entrepreneur and to business, and what does those steps look like? It's an interesting story because I think a lot of people find it engaging. I think most folks are like me, and I'll read it here. In 2009, that famous Sports Illustrated story where it said 78% of all former NFL players face financial hardship within 2 years of retirement. In the NBA, the same report says that 60% of former NBA players are broke within 5 years of leaving the NBA. It's an interesting subject of where people go wrong. They have fame and fortune, and then they piss it all away. Where do you see people go wrong?
I think the biggest thing is just a lack of education. Mm-hmm. And so like even going back into high school, or even in some cases you hear middle school, it's just there's certain areas maybe where people are underserved in education, but I think in general anywhere, they're just not getting that education. So they play sports their whole life. Mm-hmm. They play high school if they're fortunate enough to play college, but there's not that component of even at the college level, I'm finding when I talk to these people, there's not really programs out there where they might be in a one-day workshop, but there's not like a class. I talked to one guy, and he says, Rob, man, if I would have had a 6-week mandatory class or workshop that I had to do, it would have made a difference in my life. Because what's happening, especially you'll see a lot in the Division I, and especially in football, is they're so zoned into their sport that they're just not thinking of anything else. So all their fellow classmates are getting internships and doing things like that. But a lot of these athletes are so zoned in their sport, they just don't have the time to do that. So they're not getting to do the internships, they're not getting the education at college. And then when it comes to the pro level, they're not getting it either. So, from what I understand now, I guess the Players Association for baseball, football, basketball, hockey, they're trying to do more, but still not enough. And so what happens is now you've gone through, you didn't have any kind of education in high school related to that, none in college. Now all of a sudden you're a professional, and then it's done. You're like, okay, well, how did they learn?
Right.
And if there's not that support, and that's a lot of what we're trying to do too, is to bring together different partners and kind of develop curriculum and workshops to educate more, and not only educating the current athletes, but looking to help the alumni athletes too that just didn't get that.
Yeah, it always blew my mind that they'd make before NIL, they'd make these kids work and they give them scholarships, but they couldn't get internships. A lot of those kids they couldn't take the kinds of, they would love to be an engineer, but the engineering program, dictates that you got to take X amount of class, whatever. So they have to take a major that isn't, I think something that they would want to study or that they could really leverage in the future. And then they graduate, and very few go pro, and very few go pro that make a living, that make a substantial living that they can retire. And they wake up one day and they're 25, 30, whatever. And they're like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
It's wild. Where do you think the best of the best that you've seen that have transitioned from athlete to business person, what do they get right? What are they doing right?
I think a lot of it is one thing we always talk about is networking.
Yeah.
And networking, connecting. And a lot of athletes, people in general, just failed to do it. And, we encourage doing, even back to the high school. I was talking to a couple kids, freshman, sophomore football players, and I said, man, I wish I would have learned more, because think about, you're growing up playing sports, and you got your teammates and you got their parents and coaches and stuff like that. A lot of those people want to be instrumental. We had one guy that was, his son played lacrosse in college. This guy was a former college baseball player, but his son played lacrosse, and he encouraged his son's teammates to, hey, reach out to me for an internship and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities that people are missing out on. I've talked to agents before that said the best time to do is while you're playing, because you're still relevant.
Right.
And so now what happens is some of these guys, they're playing, they're they're studs, right? Yeah. Then they get done and they're like, okay, so where's my 6-figure sales job? Well, it's not there because you didn't build that network. You didn't put the time into it. So I think where the success you're seeing, back to your question, is that the ones that kind of get it, that they build the network, they connect, they look for mentors. Mentors are big.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys I talk to, whether it's people that played the game before or even people on the teams, they're tapping into it. So I think if at some point the game's going to end, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, can you take advantage, like whether it's off seasons or even when you're playing, to start building those relationships and thinking, what's my next plan after this?
Yeah.
And I think to take it a step further is that the athletes that do have success, there's that athlete skill set, the DNA, that the persistence, the leadership, everything that goes along with that. And that people, a lot of these athletes don't realize it, but they need to, because people want to hire that. Throw it back to you. Do you look at athletes when you're hiring for your company?
The answer is yes. And we've had mixed reviews. Some have done very well, others, and it just has nothing to do with the athlete, whatever. But what I do find are the people who work out the best for us have an athlete's mentality, meaning they have a very structured life. Most are people who train regularly, right? They exercise regularly. They get up at a certain time. They have a certain discipline to them. Those are the kinds of athletes, not that they played college ball or anything like that have really worked out well for us. Others haven't. One of the things I have found with athletes is specifically if you're playing D1 ball, more than likely from a very young age, you've been identified that you could. Their lives are so structured that once it's not structured, they kind of don't know what to do, right? So on the flip side of that is like, I've had everything planned for me. In the summer, I play summer ball. In the winter, we play in whatever. And then they wake up one day and they're like, oh, I didn't really learn another skill,
right?
Because I was always the big shot on campus, and now I'm not, and I got to catch up, and it becomes very frustrating to them. That's kind of some of the stuff I've seen too.
Yeah, and I think also they talk about the big thing is the identity crisis.
Yeah.
So you're playing this sport and you're, let's say you played football, you're like, hey, I'm Dan the football player. Like, no, you're Dan the person who has another 30, 40, 50 years ahead of you at least, in let's say a career. And a lot of these athletes don't get that. They're so zoned in, like you said, they've been playing since they've been young, practicing, and they identify as a sport, not as the person. And that's a big game changer there when they recognize that hey, it's no longer about just that sport. And you're right. I just, as I was listening to you, I'm thinking about, the practices and even like, they used to call them training tables. I guess they don't call them that anymore. But like, you're getting together with your team and you're eating your meals and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden you're right. You're done. And you're like, okay, well, where's my friends? And, you lose that team as well.
Yeah. It's funny because we have it here. You met one of them in the hallway before the show, is locker room guys. And the reality is sports, as much as playing the ball, they miss the locker room. They miss hanging out with the guys and stuff. And when you're building a company culture, I try to do that as well, where like, hey man, we do have downtime. We have good days, we have bad days, but who's going to pick up that person? Or when I walk in the door, am I going to get a smile on my face because I'm like, yeah, man, it's Monday morning, but I didn't see, John or Cleveland or Susan, whatever. And I get to catch up with them. Like there is something to that culture, and it carries over from not only sports, but it carries over to business. And I think that's what they miss as much as anything.
Sure.
Yeah. Like I saw an interview, I think it was with Dan Marino, and he's talking and he goes, one of the things I miss is just the guys.
Yeah.
I get to see the guys every day, and when there's no more football, you're not hanging out with the guys. It's few and far between those moments. So are there industries or verticals or things that you're seeing the athlete / entrepreneur get into? Like, are there specific industries that you see them leaning into a little more or being very successful in?
Yeah, I think a lot you'll see in sales, especially like medical sales. But it's interesting. A couple of people I've had on my podcast and their resource partners now, they've developed companies that train athletes in sales.
Yeah.
And so they're coming back because, again, it's just, you're goal oriented, you're a leader, you're used to failure. So
you're probably pretty confident.
Yeah, exactly. You're very confident. That'd be one area. Another area I think too is I just had a podcast that's actually dropped this morning because we drop them on Wednesdays. This guy, Joe Chiaffi, great guy, played football in college, and he's now the founder and CEO of a company called Salad House up in New Jersey, New York area, and they're expanding out. But we were talking about, he feels like it's such a great area for athletes to get involved in franchising.
Yeah.
And so like what they're actually trying to do as a company too is they're looking for athletes to, open up potential salad houses in their college towns.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. Like I had another guy on the podcast, guy's named Tim Wright, and played football at Rutgers. And Tim had on the Rutgers campus, he liked cutting hair. So on the campus, it's called the Wright Cuts. And it's still there today. He graduated me like 10, 15 years ago, played in the NFL a little bit, but yeah, it's cool.
Good for him. Well, because like one of the things is, and we had a guest, our last guest, Manning Sumner. He played football at Auburn, and one of the things I asked him is, "How did you learn business?"
Right.
And he goes, "Dude, I just jumped in head first, tried to bring some of those same principles I learned in football, and I failed a lot. And then I learned from those failures, and I built on it. And then I just started studying. I started studying great companies and reading, and like in life, success leaves clues. And if you follow those clues, you're going to be, awfully successful." As far as like financial planning, what goes into it? Because now you got NIL, right? And so the kids are getting money sooner.
Right.
What does that look like for some of these kids?
A lot of it is, I think, kind of to the kids are like, "Hey, I got this play money."
Yeah, right. It's a lot.
Yeah, and they don't realize. I mean, one story I'll share. One of the podcasts, we were talking to a guy, and this kid got a $40,000 deal. He spent all the money with his friends, which I in a sense, I get. I mean, they're young. I mean, it's not even at the athlete. Anybody might spend the money, right?
Correct.
The problem was, though, he didn't pay his taxes,
right?
Which is prevalent in that area. And then because of that $40,000, it brought the family income threshold above to where the kid lost a full ride too.
Oh,
and that should never happen,
right?
I mean, there should be. That's where the education comes into play. And I think, like I work with some companies where the whole idea is, okay, well, guess what? NIL is great. You're an entrepreneur, right? You're working with these companies, so you need to set up an LLC, and you need to pay your taxes, and you need to look at it that as you're building, your brand, you're dealing with a lot of companies that might want you in the future. So they need to understand that. I mean, if they're doing an NIL deal with some major sponsor, advertiser, whatever it might be, well, when they're done with their playing days, if everything went well and they treated the people right, and they might have an opportunity to go work with one of these companies, and I think that's important to do.
Yeah, if they're smart, they could leverage this into a whole career after playing ball. NIL, it's still so much smoke and mirrors. Like, is the money really as crazy as people talk about? I heard the other day, minimum starting, call it quote unquote deal for an NIL SEC offensive lineman is $750,000. So if you're an O lineman, it's minimum $750,000. The other number I heard, which was Carson Beck, University of Miami quarterback, that he got $4 million. Yeah. I'm like, are these numbers, are they really that big?
I think it's what you're hearing. I think it's few and far between.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a small percentage these athletes are getting. I think what's more interesting in the NIL deals is you're starting to see, and we were talking a little bit offline. I had another podcast, NIL for You.
Yeah.
And like last year, or 2 years ago, there was the men at Kentucky, the basketball managers.
Yeah.
Now, most of them probably could have played Division I on other schools, not at Kentucky.
Yeah.
But they did this whole dance routine and all that. And then, actually, it was for a pool company. And so they're doing this whole dancing, and then ultimately they go diving into this pool.
Yeah.
And it's so I think there's a lot of deals out there that companies want to utilize the athletes, and they're starting to look at other sports. So you're hearing about the big deals, but you're not necessarily hearing about the women's track team or the cross country runner or the swimmer or the tennis player. Like, you're starting to see more NIL deals going for them. I mean, it could be like midnight cookies. I mean,
right?
You might have you look at some of these, like Livy Dunn gymnastic. I mean,
she's crushing it.
Yeah, I mean, she's got like 3 million followers or something like that.
Right.
But those are the ones you're hearing about. But there's a lot of good with NIL. There was another deal. I don't know if you heard about it. It was I think it was like it was some school out. I don't know if it was Idaho or something like that. But one of these schools out that way, like football team, every player on the team got a $40,000 truck, and there was like 80 players.
Crazy.
So there's stuff going on out there. There are a lot of big deals.
Yeah.
But the majority of them are smaller. But I think the smaller deals are also opportunities for these kids to grow and get into entrepreneurship.
Because the NIL deals, you have to, in order to get the money from the collective, you have to do a task. Meaning, like, I can't just give you $100,000.
Right.
You have to do a day of signing autographs at the dealership or something like that, right? Like, it could be as simple as that.
Right.
Like, you can't just give you the cash, right?
No, there has to be something attached,
something tied to it.
But I mean, it's funny when you talk NIL. It's almost like the old boosters. I mean, when we went to school,
$500 handshake.
Yeah. So I think it's you have to do something to it, and I mean, the other big thing with NIL too is the whole portal, and I think it's people think differently of that, but I think it's rough because that whole team camaraderie and all that. I mean, you just got to wonder, like, how do your teammates feel when all of a sudden, well, I'm not really playing, so I'm just going to go to this other school, and
Yeah, to manage a locker room's got to be a nightmare.
it's got,
Yeah.
and even for coaches too, because a lot of
Right.
these coaches are starting to be like, well, if they can go, why can't I go too? It's
Right.
I think you're losing a little bit of that team
Correct.
that when, we were growing up and saw, it
Yeah.
was a different story.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a pro league now. It's
Yeah.
not college anymore. The interesting thing I heard about the NIL, which was, so they're like, oh, look at all these kids transferring. They go into the portal.
Right.
What I've heard a lot of, it's actually forced transfer a lot of guys. So the coach will come to him and say, hey, you remember last year we got an NIL deal for you to come on and we're gonna pay you $150,000. This year it's $25,000. The kid's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then they leave. But the coach likes to present it as, oh, look at all these spoiled brats. When 4 years, which I've always thought was crazy, the coach can leave anytime. So he recruits these
Right.
kids. He sits across from mom and dad, says, I'm going to take care of your son. And then the next year he can lie to their face and go and transfer to anywhere. But the kid can't leave. He's got a red shirt and all stuff like that. I always thought was, a lot of BS and not fair to the kids.
Yeah, it's kind of getting their cake and eating it too, right?
Yeah, man, totally. How is hosting a podcast on this subject? How is that changing your perception on the athlete who has to pivot in life to being a business owner or getting into business in general?
It's been an interesting journey. I really I enjoy it. You're talking to athletes who've gone into all different types of businesses, and a lot of them, I think there's always this stigma that athletes are the dumb jocks.
Jock, yeah.
And I'll tell you, even sometimes when you do a podcast, like either on the pod, maybe like ahead of time, like, okay, well, this person did this, or whatever the sport they played.
Yeah.
And then I'll do the podcast. I'm like, man, that's freaking great.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, holy shit, this guy knows what he's doing, or this woman knows what they're doing. And it's very refreshing. And there's a lot of sharp people in general.
Yeah, sure.
But I think, athletes don't necessarily get the credit for that. And from what I've seen on the ones that I've had, I mean, most of them have had success, going on, but some of them struggle in the beginning too. So it's kind of interesting to hear their journey and how things changed around, and what pivots and shifts they might have made in meeting different people. I mean, I think it's very important to have that network around you and have those connections. People want to help, and then you also have that mentality, you want to help others too.
Yeah. Is there a sport that you've seen the most success, like drive the most success? Football, golf, baseball, whatever? Is there any correlation?
Not really, because I think it's, I've had all different.
Yeah, you've had everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I've had snowboarders. I mean, I had one person, she was a snowboarder, and she developed some kind of product for her kid. It was like I guess what you would wear, like the leggings or what you wear for snowboarding. So she basically made it for babies so that when babies had diaper rash, like instead of having to have a diaper on, they could put these on and kind of crawl around. And she sold it in like 85 countries and a multi-million-dollar business that she ultimately sold. And then she got to advertising and getting to AI. So, I mean, it's just some of these athletes and what they're doing today just blows your mind.
But yeah.
Holy cow, like just they figured it out, and you're just like, I want to hang out with them. I want to be like
that. I want to learn from them.
But back to, there's not really, I think it's, I mean, I've had a lot of football players and baseball players. And I guess the one thing that I will say is that most of the people I've had haven't played professionally.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that made a difference or not, that maybe that, they were done with college and maybe they were zoned more in, and maybe there's a little bit less stress on them just knowing that, okay, my career's done.
Yeah.
And going forward. I mean, that's the only correlation there.
What advice you've done over 100 episodes, what advice would you give to somebody who's coming out of college that's a former ball player that maybe has a chance at pros, whatever, and has to get into business? What are some takeaways that you've seen from the podcast?
I would say the biggest thing I keep coming on is just connecting with people, working together with people. I mean, people I think are enamored by athletes.
Yeah,
and they want to be around them. But I think just people want to help, and I think that's the problem. A lot of people struggle. I mean, you hear worst case scenarios. You heard some of these Olympians and other people that ultimately take their lives.
Yeah,
and so we want to make a difference in that, and like helping that. There's people that want to help you, and I think a lot of these athletes that struggle just be open to help. I mean, you were on a team, you were coached and all that. You got your teammates. It's okay. I mean, you might have been this stud and all that, but it doesn't matter. I mean, people want to help you, like accept the help, and then also be willing to flip it on the other side eventually and be that mentor and help others out as well.
Very cool. I remember we We had a business in Chicago, and our real estate brokerage was the Staubach Group, Roger Staubach.
Okay.
And I asked them, I go, oh, is he just like the names on the wall? And they go, no, he's there every day working.
Yeah.
And he doesn't talk about football unless there's a client who comes in and wants war stories. Hey, when I won the Heisman and all this kind of stuff. And sure enough, when we closed our deal, he called me on my cell phone, and I'm like, this is like what? And it was Roger Staubach. And he sent me an autographed mine. He was a total gentleman and really, really great. And I thought that was really, really cool. Like, here's a guy who has accomplished everything. I mean, literally a Vietnam vet, war hero, Heisman Trophy, Super Bowl champ. He's been super successful in business. And I'm a little account. And he still picked up the phone and called me. I was like, wow, there's something to the guy of how he got successful. And it's those little things like that he was able to get people to follow. And just calling me a small client in Chicago. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I heard a lot of good things about him. And I think those are the people that I want to deal with and talk to, like the people that have humility.
Yeah.
And they just, and it's cool. It's refreshing to see, because a lot of times even some of the bigger name people I've had, they're like really cool.
Yeah.
And like, sometimes you would feel like, how do you get into that circle? And you might not be able to get in that circle if you're just everyday life, but just talking to them and them opening up, it's like, okay, well, they're real people. I mean, I think a lot of us fans put the athletes on the pedestals, but when you get to know some of them, it's just really cool to see that.
Well, what you fail to recognize is that they want to learn from you.
Yeah.
So so you have your war stories in business that they don't have because they were playing ball. And the good ones, I find, ask a lot of questions, take notes, follow up, and want to be engaged, and kind of check their ego at the door, that persona of them running out on the field in front of 80,000 people that was in the past. And that they're a new person they want to develop and have a second act. If there's one athlete / business person that you could get on the show, who would it be?
Well, I've always been manifesting, because I'd love him to be part of my business too. Maybe Shaq.
Shaq is the best,
because he's an entrepreneur. He's humor. He's
likable as hell. Smart.
Yeah.
Very smart.
I would say he would be definitely towards the top of the list. I mean, other than that, I mean, he's the first one that comes to mind. I mean, there's probably like fandom I'd want to have, like some of these guys that I root for my teams and all that. But Shaq, with the whole business side, I think would be.
I would love to just have him in here. I think he's bigger than this room.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's a real sharp guy, and he's done it. Fantastic brand, not only TV and all the different sponsorships, but he's the operator of a bunch of businesses. And he's done it big in the franchise space. What would you ask Shaq?
What would I ask Shaq? That's a good question. I think I would probably talk a little bit about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then just ask him, like, how, like from an Alumni Direct perspective, like, Shaq, how would you bring on and engage, fellow alumni, whether it's alumni athletes or alumni from LSU? What would you do? Probably something like that.
On the alumni side, what schools do you think get it right?
I think a lot of the big schools. I mean, you always hear like Michigan and Ohio State. They do a great job. I think the Ivy League schools, because they get it.
Yeah.
I think there's that mentality. Even when you look at fraternities and sororities.
Yeah.
They get the whole networking, connecting. Helping each other out. So I mean, I think it's the people that are in tune with that.
That's advice I'd give to any young person is, who do you hang out with? You're the makeup of the 5 people you hang out with. And if you are hanging around and it's your partner too, whoever you're dating, if you're outgrowing them, or you don't like some of the stuff you see, or you're not growing and developing with them, then you should peel away and get 5 new ones. And then always, because it really too, like those habits rub off on you.
Yeah.
And like I said, success leaves clues. And if you're around people who are doing really great things, you'll pick up on those good habits. On the flip side, if you're around people who are doing bad things, you'll pick up on those habits. So
for
sure, totally. Anything else, man? Anything else exciting you're working on, or have coming up in the next year or two on the Alumni Direct network?
Yeah, we're trying to grow it out and just really start getting some traction on working with some of the Division II, Division III schools. We definitely see an opportunity there where they don't have the platforms, they don't have the bandwidth. So if we can help them out, one thing that's been kind of interesting that we kind of came across recently that we're trying to build up is every school has a SAC committee, which is the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. and each team typically has 2 representatives. Sometimes the football team might have 4.
Yeah.
But a lot of schools, you'd be surprised at how many sports they have, even the smaller schools. So, I mean, if you think about now having, potentially, 30, 40, 50, 60 leaders of teams being part of this SAC community center, where you've got University of Miami SAC members that could be interacting with FAU, that could be interacting with Rutgers, Ohio State. So it's bringing together that fraternity sorority for SAC of both the current members that are still playing, as well as now giving a challenge for their alumni to get back together and remember those days. So I think it's working on building some of these different communities. Big time focusing on sports in the future. Probably veterans would be another area, because I think there's a huge need for that. It's just there's a lot of, as we always say, like a lot of things are a lot of very fragmented out there, and we want to kind of bring them together and make it happen. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I just want to build that out, continue to build the podcast, and we've got some pretty cool resource partners that we're working with that I think have some valuable products and solutions that we can bring to our members and to other people in that community.
Awesome. Where can people find out about you, and where can people hear the podcast?
So the podcast is on our Alumni Direct YouTube channel, as well as across all the podcast networks. So you can watch it on YouTube, or you can Spotify, iHeart, all the Spotify, Apple Radio, and stuff like that, or whatever different things are. AlumniDirect.com is our site. They can find us on LinkedIn and Facebook. They can find me, Rob Finkelstein, on both LinkedIn and Facebook, and love to help anybody out. So just definitely. And as far as the show goes, we're trying to encourage more people to listen and watch the podcast. We need to increase our following. And it's not, I always say, it has nothing to do with me. It's just it's the advice that these athletes give. And I think there's so much value there that can truly help some of these struggling athletes out there.
I can't let you go without asking you a Mets question. You're a huge Mets fan.
Yes.
Should Keith Hernandez be in the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Yes. Why?
I think it's he had a great career.
Yeah. He won an MVP.
Won an MVP.
World Series.
Lifetime. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Gold Gloves. He's up there.
Gold Gloves, 300 hitter. I mean, he was a great baseball player. And I think, everybody's enamored by the home runs and things like that, and RBIs. And even then, he had a decent amount of that. Yeah. But he's a great fielder. I mean, he had the whole package.
He had the whole package.
And I think he definitely deserves to be in it.
And I always thought it was cool. He smoked cigarettes. He didn't even look like a ball player, but he could hit. He could hit.
And he's a great broadcaster.
He's a great broadcaster, and he was on Seinfeld. He dated Elaine for a little bit.
That's right. That was big. That might be the highlight of his career.
That might be the highlight of his career.
Yeah, he had the long flowing hair back
I'm Keith
then.
Hernandez. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
That's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.